Hi everyone, welcome to Dave Bonsai. On today's episode, as promised, a little update on what's been going on with the PSGF. It is truly one of my favorite parts of the day, coming to the passive solar green frame. Welcome in everyone. It is great to be checking out the trees every day. Now we've had a lot of sun in the month of November, more sun than most Novembers. We've had hardly any snow, so it's easy to get in and out of the PSGF so far, but in the future there's going to be snow. Take another quick look at the trail as I walk into the passive solar green frame and the brown grass trail there that's all matted down. Now once the snow's on the ground, that won't be an issue. And hopefully in the summer, that won't be an issue. But I've got this path right now that's, yeah, you can tell where I go every single day. So how is the passive solar green frame doing? I know people are dying to know. People have been patiently waiting. And as promised, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on with the passive solar green frame. So essentially I want this greenhouse green frame, cold frame thing to do is to stay as regulated as possible. And there's been a little bit of issue with the regulation. So let's talk about that. So we have our air tube, a great big 8-inch air tube that sucks in the warm air on the really hot days in the summer and the hot days in the winter, mind you, brings it down underground 5 feet, goes through all the pipes and comes back up over there cooler. And then at night, if we've been going below freezing and it gets below freezing in here, well, then I have to turn this on again through a temperature regulated source. So I get the warmer air downstairs when it's 40 down there. It's not really downstairs. When it's warmer down in those tubes and I get 40 degrees up here when it's only mid-20s, that's going to warm this back up. Because ideally, I don't want things to freeze thaw. Now, the trees in my passive solar green frame are all fine to probably go down to that mid to upper 20 range. Yes, it's frozen, but it's not deep, deep cold, and the roots are the things we worry about in our trees. And if they get below 20, below 15, a lot of damage to most trees, many trees. Now, our cold hardy Minnesota trees can do a lot more, have a lot more protection, and they can handle some of that. But our Japanese maples and Chinese elms that some people keep indoors, we want to keep it probably mid to upper 20s is the least I want to go in here. But ultimately, people build the passive solar greenhouses, not the green frame as I call it, to keep crops above freezing 365, right? I'm not so worried about 365 not going below freezing. What I'm more concerned about in my passive solar green structure, frame in this case, is I don't want this to be 70 degrees in the middle of the daytime, especially after it's been close to freezing at night. And here's the scoop. I've got some great information from the GoV people who send me a report every Sunday, and I check out all my averages and everything. And I, of course, have on my phone, my app, I can look at the last month, the last year, the last week, the day, the hour. It's fantastic. And look at some of these high spikes. Not so great. Now, I've only been below freezing about 2 or 3 times since November 1st, but I've also been above 60 about a half a dozen or more times. And I don't like that. So here's what we got to do and the adjustments that I think I have to make to my passive solar green frame to make this work. First and foremost, let me tell you all, when you're working on a project like this and people tell you to do something, try to listen to that and do it as best as you can. Now, usually those somethings cost money. And so that's the one thing we have to be careful of when we make a plan like this. How much did I expect this to cost and what did I actually spend? Well, we're going to talk about that in a video I'm editing for later this winter to be released on a big old summary from start to finish where we are today with the PSGF, how much it costs, what went into it, what was wrong, what would I do better next time. We're going to cover some more of those things later in that video, but today we're just going to talk about the heat and sun portion of this. So again, I repeat, get the things that people say you should get, and here's one of them, the power source. Okay, so I have a Blue Eddy power source that I've showed you, right? That brings in sun power, and then it powers up my fans and hopefully keeps everything regulated. Right off the bat, what are you going to think I'm going to tell you? I should have gone up the next 1 or 2 levels of power stations for this right here to have enough power to do what I needed to do. Hand in hand with the bigger power station would be more solar power up top. So I have a 200 watt power panel up top, a solar panel. Now it's rated for 200 watts, but I have never seen 200 watts of power going into the Bluetti. I've seen as high as about 160 so far, but nothing higher. And on a day like today where the sun is just trying to peek through the clouds, I can get 5, 10, 15 watts kind of coming in slowly, but it's barely going to lift up the Bluetti, hardly any. I need 2 completely sunny days back to back to get 100% or close to it power in the Bluetti. But remember, the Bluetti though, if it has 2024, whatever it is, watt hours of power, you're not going to get 2000. That's what it's rated for, but you're going to get about 85% of that. Bad power stations give you in the 70s, really top-notch ones get you in that low 90 range, and the Bluetti, I think what I've gotten so far is that mid to upper 80s. So if it says 2000 watt hours, yeah, I'm not going to get much more than 1600 out of the 2000, right? And so then you have your fan, a couple of them, maybe some lights, some power, you're going to drain it pretty fast. And so that's been one issue. To date, I've had to bring the Bluetti power station into the house and charge it up real quick with power from the house. And now I've put an extension cord from my fish pond that's keeping it aerated and not frozen solid for the winter. I have an extension cord leading into the PSGF, and I'm charging it today for the 3rd time since November 1st. Because it takes 2 full days to charge that. If I have 3 days of gray in a row, gray, no sun coming in, I'm going to be losing my power. So one of the #1 things I wish I would have done better on the PSGF, more solar panel and a bigger power station, hands down. But that would have cost more money. Those elements were about 1/5 or 1/6 of the entire cost. And if I would have spent what I should have spent, it would have been more like 1/4 or 1/5. But you know, you get what you pay for, right? So here's my thoughts. So I have my 200 watt panel mounted up there, and again, it's on hinges, and I can lift it up in the summer for the higher sun. And right now the sun is almost in its lowest point. So coming up on the 21st of December, it's winter solstice time, and it's going to be the shortest day of the year. The angle of this roof and the angle of that is about as close as I can get to what I need on the 21st of December. And of course the 30 days before and the 30 days after. And then when those 30 days are gone, I can adjust that a little bit, but of course I can't adjust the window. But I wanted the window at this height, these windows, this height, for in the dead of winter, the shortest days of the year. I need that sun coming right over there to get as much of a good angle here and not have a flatter roof where the sun can't get in. So I need a really steep angle. So some people might have been looking at this rocket ship design and going, what is he doing? Well, that of course is the main reason. I need a really sharp incline. Plus the reason why there's a sharp incline for a passive solar green frame in Minnesota is because of the snow load. You don't want a lot of heavy snow on here causing any damage. Now this is windows, and I've got this middle support beam in here, and I'm gonna broom off the snow after every snowstorm anyway, but that's another reason is snow load, you want it to kind of fall right off if you can. Oh, do you hear the Canadian honkers? Probably not with my mic on here. Canadian honkers are flying over, I love that. Great time of year for that as they sometimes stick around, sometimes do a little migrating. So here's what I'm thinking about to improve the passive solar green frame from my first #1, I think, mistake so far is not enough solar power panels. Okay, that's 200 watts. Now, my system, the 1800, I believe the max input of solar power it can take at one time is 200 watts. So there's another reason to buy a bigger power station. You want to be able to bring in 400 watts at a time when the sun is out in full glory, so it juices up faster. You can take advantage of the sun even if it's only out for part of the day or partial day. So 200 is not enough. But if I get another 200, well, then I'm going to have 400. But it's only going to take 200 tops into the PSGF, or the Bluetti rather. But that's great. If I get 200 full power in there, it's going to juice up much faster. So I have a couple of options. Of course, if I buy another 200, they'll match, and I'll put it right up next to it. Now I could put it the same direction, and then I would cover this window. Here's another thought. These windows are letting in so much of that warmth sun, and it's getting a little too warm in here. I have 2 things I might do to this passive solar green frame to get less sun in here, and that might be plugging up some of the windows because it's getting plenty of sunshine inside. So I could put the new panel this way, vertical, and then it would cover these 2 windows. I'd be down to 2/3 of this window mass to let that sun in. Would that help? I think it might. Will these plants suffer for any reason? They could. So I'll either put it vertical and it'll cover down to here, or a horizontal rather, or I'll put it vertical. And then I would have enough power to juice up the power station. So that's one thing. Now, if I go ahead and get a 400 watt panel, I could just replace the 400 watt up there and save that for a future project. Or I can get a 400 and put it in anyway, plug this one in and just leave it up there for now, but I probably should put it in the house if it's not being used to protect it more. But maybe I get a bigger generator right away. Now they've had a lot of great big Black Friday sales, but yeah, they're expensive. And I don't know if I want to drop another couple grand possibly. I don't remember what the higher ones cost off the top of my head. So 200 would be the cheap fix. But what did I say moments ago in the PSGF? Always get bigger, you're gonna need it anyway. So for those of you who've been with me for a while know that I have a dream of acquiring some land up north about an hour, hour and a half from here. I'm gonna acquire some land and put some more trees in the ground, and I wanna build one of these bad boys up there that's completely self-sustaining. So if I'm gonna buy new solar panels now for this that could be used for that in the future, I might as well just get 400s. And here's why. I'll get a 400 now, plug it in, save that one for later, and then I have already a 200 for later. Or I can take this 400 one off here and bring it up there and buy a couple more 400s for when it really has to be self-sustaining. So 200 or 400, we'll have to figure that out. It might come down to money, but again, I'll heed my warning. Buy more than you think you need, and yeah, you might have to struggle for a little bit longer financially, but it might be worth it. Back inside the passive solar green frame, and here's the other idea. Yes, I can buy more solar panels that'll juice up the Blue Eddy faster, and I'll be able to have more power so I don't have to plug in through the house system. Now again, right now, I have the house, the extension cord, I can make this work. Remember, this is an experiment this year, but if this was on a piece of land someday, I'm not gonna have backup power necessarily. I might or might not have any electrical hookup, and I'm trying to be off the grid if I can, as much off grid on the piece of land as possible. So we'll continue to experiment. But for this passive solar green frame in my backyard and what's going on right now, we have too much heat. So I mentioned out there, we cover up these windows, less blazing sunshine comes in here, maybe doesn't heat up quite as much. So that would help me have more power and take away at least one of these 6 windows here, or possibly 2 if I go vertical, and have less sunshine. So between now and Christmas, just around the corner, right? I'm probably not gonna buy a bigger power station. I'm probably not gonna buy a $400 power supply panel. I'm probably not gonna do that quite yet. I gotta get through the holidays, right? So I might have to use the cord for the time being, and that's okay. I can live with that. But what about the too hot situation? I can cover some windows now, and so that's what I did today. Well, I didn't do it yet, but I went shopping. Yeah. So when I went shopping, I picked up a couple more of the pink panels, which aren't cheap either, but I could afford those right now. I bought some pink insulation panels to put inside the PSGF. So here's what I'm thinking. At the very minimum, I can cut to shape the bottom 3 windows. And the reason why I want to cut them to the bottom 3 windows and make them fit in there and keep them in there is that during the day, when it is getting warm in here, when I leave for work in the morning, if it's going to be a sunny day, I put them in here. I put some pink panels in here and I secure them in there, and then the sun only gets the top half up here and the bottom windows down below, but it'll still warm up the PSGF. And as long as I have the extension cord for that extra power that I need, yeah, if it's not getting as warm as I'd like to recycle the air, because that's what it's going to do, right? Warm air goes down the tubes and warms up down below in the thermal mass category, and then those rocks are a little bit warmer than normal, and then in the nighttime it releases that air, right? But if I do that and let that warm air hover in here, these are all going to want to wake up. Now, I don't worry about that quite as much now. Mid-December to mid-February is where I'm really concerned. Mid-December to mid-February, those 2 months, I want these dormant. Now, if I extend my growing season and these stay awake and just kind of hover in here through November and into the first part of November with up and down temps, I'm not so concerned about that. If you are, please let me know in the comments. Let me know your experience and what you're thinking, because they'll go dormant. They're just not dormant yet. But I also don't want to stress the trees out and have them confused. Is it going to be 70 or 30? 70 or 30? But what I really want is from this time on, as we approach mid-December through mid-February, now I really want it to be as stable as possible. So let's put the pink things here today. We'll put those in here, here, and here. We'll measure them up, get a system to keep them there. And then on sunny days, I'll put them in place. On cloudy days, I don't have to worry about it. And I'll just keep them in here, hopefully out of the way. Now they're pink, and so they're not pretty. I would eventually spray paint them gray, but it's fall, winter soon. It's too cold. I'll do that later. So I'll have a little pink look in my green frame for a while. But I hope that'll keep the sun from baking this. That's number one. And number two, when the sun bakes on these trees, remember I talked about the thermal mass of the pillars that I made and all the pillars here? Well, these pots get that glare from the sun. That sun comes in and radiates on these pots, and the pots warm up, especially if they're black. And I don't want them to warm up the roots either that much. So if I have some blockage here, the sun's coming in here where there's no plants right now, and it can warm it up to where it needs to warm it up. You know, the 40s, maybe 50 tops, but these won't warm up with direct sunlight on them. So I'm thinking that'll protect the pots and the plants and the roots pretty well if I put the pink stuff up. And if I really need to go even further, I could block all of the 5 windows down below. The 5 windows in the bottom of my passive solar green frame are wonderful. They're pretty. They made the PSGF really nice to look at, and my wife's really appreciative of that. But here's what's happening with all these windows. We're letting in a little too much light in the daytime and releasing too much of the heat at night, right? Because this is not as good of insulation as this wall back here, which remember we left it thick and insulated, and the side walls too. So part number 2 that I maybe would redo when I do this design, if it was this size again, what I would do differently is I would completely skip the bottom 2 side windows and have that more thick insulated wall. Less warmth would escape. And quite frankly, the bottom knee wall, they call that the knee wall down there below these massive windows, those didn't even need to be there possibly. Or I get half the windows that can open up for ventilating and then have more insulated wall at the bottom. So smaller windows. But I got all of these windows for free and the door, so this is what I built. I purposely cut these pink window covers a little bit too big because, as I've mentioned before on the show, maybe not enough. Measure twice, maybe 3 or 4 times, and only cut once. I made them too big, but once I put them in here, I knew I had to trim them up, so I put a couple of trimming on here, and number 1 is in there nice. So now it's tight enough to stay in there. There's a little bit of a loose spot up here which allows me to have access to it real easy and pull it back out. Now if I made it a little bit too thin, I did buy a couple of metal pieces with little holes in them. I can put a drill on one hole and then kind of swing it down here and hold these in place. But it's a nice snug fit and I still can take it out real easy. So that's one of them. I've got 2 more to do, and then we're going to see how much darker it is. Look at, already it's darker in this corner. So let's put these trees back in place, move these trees, and keep on moving. While I went out to retrieve the other pink one, I remembered that I put this one in backwards. I don't want to see the pink panther from the house. I think I just want to see pink. This batch of trees, all on a boot tray. Move them up, move them back, that was easy. Going Gonna have to empty the trash for the first time in the PSGF. So this one wasn't quite as nice. Maybe this one's not quite as plumb, but I chopped off a good ½ inch too much. But it holds in place. I don't need any contraption to hold it in. It'll be fine. It'll just let a little bit more of the cold air seep out in the crack here than those first two. Although there are some cracks on this one too. Again, this isn't going to be a perfectly tight seal, but that much more insulation will hopefully hold that much more air. And of course, what they do in China, a lot of the people that make these passive solar greenhouses in China, they do a lot on the banks of hillsides, and so it's half underground. And they got that southern exposed, and they put an insulation curtain, if you will. So if I had a bigger greenhouse than this, or I had some tracks on here and had some curtain material, I could just bring the curtain right on down for the nighttime and bring it back up for the light time. So those are some other advances we could make on the PSGF if we're not maintaining enough heat at night. So a blanket, if you will, or a curtain that's insulated, that give it some R value, and you just close the windows at night, and that would be closing up over half, 50% of the window space, and the heat would not escape as much. So we have 3. Let's take a peek from the outside. Probably not going to be as pretty of a PSGF anymore. Because of the glare of the window, you're not really seeing the true pink color that I see with my naked eyes up close and off to the sides. But pink, a little bit brighter white here, almost bright pink, and then pink over here. So yeah, it's not as pretty to look at by any stretch, but this is going to only be on sunny days when I'm at work. And if it's a cloudy day like today, we don't have to put these in. And they're thin enough, I can store them on the back part of the PSGF, and we should be good. Not too bad. I'll be very curious to see how much of the heat that this keeps from getting in, blocking all that sun. There will be some trapped heat within here between the insulation and the window. There'll be some heat in there for sure, but hopefully it dissipates it a little bit. And again, hopefully up there, it's not going to be as hot in there with less light to be able to penetrate through. Being as it's about 40 degrees outside right now on a gray day with no sun, my hands getting a little cold. But we finished the project for today. I've got 3 panels now right here, side by side, that can go on the bottom section for the next sunny day. We'll put it in here and we'll monitor the heat level for that day. Now, when I purchased the 4x8 pink stuff, I got 2 of them, thinking that one was not quite enough for 3 and I'd have a lot of odd extra shapes. But I just got 3 of them out with very little waste. It turned out to be really great measurements. So now I can make maybe up to 3 more. So my next windows would probably be the east-facing window and the west-facing window to keep a little bit more heat in. And then from the house, you wouldn't see the pink stuff there. The neighbors might, but I'm not so worried about that. Once it snows a little bit, So we'll maybe put some pink stuff on that window, pink stuff on that window, and hopefully those 5 additions, that could stay in on the windows 24/7 to keep a little bit more warmth in here, especially at night. That wraps another one here in the PSGF. So again, buy more power than you think you're going to need. Buy more solar panel power than you think you're going to need because you're going to need it. Always go over. The other thing they suggested, of course, is the venting system. So I'm having a tough time keeping this thing cool. And so if those were bigger and cranking out more air, I might be able to keep it cooler during the daytime when the sun is out. And then they could just be off at night. That's another area that I might have to put some blankets over or some pink stuff to make sure there's nothing seeping out of those 2 areas as much. So again, to run those fans though, during 4 or 5 straight hours in the middle of the day with sun would take more energy. So it all comes back down to a bigger panel and a bigger power station to run those if it's too hot in here. We'll get there. The experiments continue. Hey, thanks for watching. Take care of you, take care of your bonsai, and we'll catch you on the next one, everyone.